Grand Rising, everyone. We are reading God's love and justice. We're starting at March 22nd. Sabbath. Love is the fulfillment of the law. Take time to read this week's Sabbath School lesson, starting from Exodus 21 through 17 and on. The memory text says, "Owe no one nothing except to love one another, for he who loves another has fulfilled the law." That's Romans 13:8 in the New King James Version. While they were dealing with a problematic member, someone on the church board said to the pastor, "We can't make decisions based on compassion." We can't? The pastor wondered what this person's understanding of God and of God's law must have been. Compassion certainly needs to be central in how we deal with people, especially erring ones. Compassion is part and parcel of love, and as Romans 13 verse 8 tells us, to love one's neighbor is to fulfill the law. If love is indeed the fulfillment of the law, then we should be careful not to think of law in a way that is separate from love, or to think of love in a way that is disconnected from the law. In Scripture, love and law go together. The divine lawgiver is love, and accordingly, God's law is the law of love. God's law is not a set of abstract principles, but they are commands and instructions intended for our flourishing. God's law is, in its totality, an expression of love as God Himself expresses it. We move on to Sunday, the law of love, March 23rd. God's law does not consist of abstract principles. Instead, God's law is an expression of relationship. This can be seen explicitly in the Ten Commandments. The basic principles of the Ten Commandments were in place already in the Garden of Eden, the principles of love that were to govern the relationship between God and between people themselves. When the Ten Commandments proclaimed in Exodus 20 were afterward written in stone, they were given to Israel in the context of the covenant relationship. The commandments were written down after the Lord already had delivered the people from Egypt, and the commandments were based on God's love and on His promises to the nation. One can see in the two divisions of the Ten Commandments that they are aimed at the flourishing of a human relationship with God and of relationship with one another. Read Exodus 21 through 17. How do these verses reveal the two principles, those of love for God and of love for others? The first four commandments deal with people's relationship with God, and the last six with people's relationships among themselves. Our relationship both to God and to other people must be regulated by the principles of God's law. These two parts of the law correspond directly to what Jesus identified as the two greatest commandments. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart. That's coming out of Matthew 22 and verse 37. And you shall love your neighbor as yourself. The first four commandments are the ways in which we are to love God with all of our being, and the last six are ways we ought to love one another as ourselves. Jesus makes it explicit that these two great commandments are integrally related to the law. On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets, Matthew 22, verse 40. The entirety of God's law, then, is grounded in God's love. God's love and law are inseparable. We often hear people say, we don't need to keep the law. We just need to love God and to love others. Why does that idea not make sense? How could we express love to God or to others if we are violating any one of the Ten Commandments? This is Pastor Patrick Graham from the Glenridge Seventh-day Adventist Church. I want to thank you for listening and subscribe to get this every day and share this with someone. And today, God bless you real good.